All right, so I'm going to get started here. I'm Brian Patrick Corrigan, so welcome to the Self-Center meeting. Well, now you see what Hank looks like in 2007 from that video. He looks better now somehow. But anyway, so you have 3 minutes to say whatever you like, just don't curse or insult anyone. Then people have 3 opportunities to ask you something. You have 2 minutes to answer all of them, so give brief answers. Yes, no, I don't know, or a brief explanation. And if you have point information or like a comment, we don't take that. Just ask the person something. If you have something to say, you just come up here and say it. Now, Jack ate a bunch of watermelons, and he's a little fiery right now. So the floor is open for whoever would like to come up. All you gotta do is raise your hand, or people in Zoom world, just let me know. I think Nancy was on there, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She maybe has to reconnect. All right. So the floor is open. For whoever would like to come up. If not, oh, and I forgot to say, Fernando Mendez is the featured speaker this evening. So we'll clap for Fernando for later.
Early clap.
All right. Well, then I'll start off. So
I'm
once
just gonna
again,
show up right before I start.
Brian Patrick Corrigan, chiropractor, Jersey City, New Jersey. So some people do ask me, they watch some of the self-center meetings, you know, quickly put it on YouTube and they watch it. And they say, you guys talk about the Bible and stuff like that. And they think it's like a religious group. I say, no, we're not a part of any religion, and we're not pushing religion, and we're not bashing religion. We're not. So the one thing I learned from Pasquale was a couple things. He goes, we don't need religion. We need spirituality that comes from the Almighty God. And when Pasquale spoke about the Bible, he told us it's really, if you look at it, he says, if you try to read that book and try and make sense out of it in like a chronological order and stuff, he says you'll go haywire. It took him 39 years to start to learn to get the real wisdom from it. And he says, look at it this way, it's the story about a soul that's progressing. And when he said Almighty God, he says, some people think there's like that there's a God from the Old Testament and a God from the New Testament. His thing was there's just one God for all of it, and for all of us, no matter who you are or what. So when you look at that Bible, and the other thing is, where every person in that Bible is a representation of us. No matter who it is, or what stage they're doing, or what they're doing, that's what's inside of us. And from that True North video, you just saw how Pasquale said, everything pushed forward, with that clock pushed forward into magnetic north, the soul just takes a beating. We're just taking a beating. But we still have that little grain in us, that speck in us, that spark in us, that's allowing us and letting us knowing that we really are true north. Until we just have that big moment where it just happens. And that's really our soul in 2 places. We're split up. We're in the magnetic north and the true north, but our consciousness is really magnetic north. But chiropractic helps us get our consciousness in true north, the Almighty God. And I think that's starting to happen in the world today. And there's some people who don't want us doing that. But for chiropractors, we're going to help people by focusing on the true Almighty God inside themselves. And that's going to save us. So that's what I have to say. Would anyone like to ask me anything? Bob Watson.
Have you, excuse me, have you read the whole Bible in its entirety? Not in order, but going through?
No.
No.
A lot of it, but I can't say all of it. But I'm not a biblical scholar. I don't claim to be. I don't really say that much about it because I know I don't know. Anyone else want to ask me anything? I just said that because people were asking me. Anyone else? Anyone? Sorry.
What does true north mean to you?
True north, it's mean our God consciousness. It's who we really are. We're always there. It's just we've been put off the wrong track. But chiropractic is helping us get back on that track and to help us raise our awareness and be doing small sequential steps. Anyone else? I got one more from you. All right, that's it for me then. Thank you. We got the Fireball Jack here. Anyone else want to ask me anything? Come up, Bob Watson.
Nancy's back.
Nancy's
Hello,
back in action.
Good evening. Bob Watson, Brooklyn, Queens. now Jersey City right now. I have a friend from chiropractic school who just recently sent me these videos of this particular man. His name is Brandon Joe Williams. Oh, I'll look at you. Otherwise, I'm staring at the camera like I'm auditioning.
No, stand towards this way.
But
As long as you spot.
Brandon Joe Williams, and he's got a course. It's a free course called Contract Killers. So he takes you through step by step how to kill all your contracts with the United States corporation. So I started watching the videos. I think there's about 39. I got up to about 14 or 15 of them. And it gave me the idea, actually, because my girlfriend is from China, and she has a Chinese passport, but she'd like to travel internationally, which she's putting off for now. But according to this person, Brandon Joe Williams, and not even just according to him, when you go on the Department of State's website, it basically says you can get a non-citizen U.S. national passport, which means you can't vote, but you have a national passport, and all you basically have to do is have a signed affidavit that you pledge allegiance to the United States, and then you fill out this DS-11 form for the Department of State, and it seems like maybe that's all you have to do to get that passport. And then he goes into other things with the IRS, and this has been the best thing I've seen so far, where he's coming totally from peace. He's not looking to fight the government, he's not looking to take them down. He's looking at, okay, how are they operating, and then what can he do or we can do in relationship to them to be out of their jurisdiction, which I guess it ties into what you were talking about basically, or I'm sorry, Pasquale, with the, how they put the system between us and God, and they have the attorneys, which is the turn, which that probably turns us away from the true God. So I'm looking at it. I don't know if I'm going to go full on with this. I would like to definitely. He's driving. I shouldn't say driving. He's traveling, or whatever the words are. He's a sojourner on the land. He's got a car and a motorcycle with diplomatic plates, and he uses his passport as ID. So if a cop pulls him over, he's registered as a U.S. national. It's all legit. And then they have to call a phone number to verify that he's a U.S. national. And once they do, they can't give him a ticket because he's not in the system of the United States corporation. I think so. You're coming up.
No, you have like another minute.
Oh, another minute? Yeah, so that I can see myself at this point utilizing. I did have an experience about a week or two ago. I was riding down Flatbush in Brooklyn on 2 separate occasions. I didn't know there was a new speed camera. There's one speed camera I know about. Now they put another one about 200 feet away from it. It's like a speed camera within a speed camera. So I got 2 tickets. They came together in the mail. So I looked up on YouTube this other guy about discharging the debt, and he utilized it. He was able to discharge a red camera light where it was $100, and they sent him a letter. You do not have to pay this. The $100 is discharged. So I followed everything he said, just put in my information, and I sent it to the chief financial officer of the New York City Department of Finance with return receipt. So let's see if it gets to her and she actually signs it and sends it back to me. And I'm sure they're going to take my paperwork, and I had US UCC and US USC codes in there referring to what the guy was saying. And they'll probably throw it around their lawyers there and see if they want to just discharge me, or probably just say, oh no, we don't honor this or whatever, which would be breaking their own codes.
Anyone want to ask Bob anything? Anyway. How does this help you, Bob, knowing these things?
Towards freedom. I'd like to be free in as many ways as possible, as long as I'm not hurting anybody or damaging anyone's property.
Anyone else want to ask Bob anything?
What's your favorite thing about chiropractic?
My favorite thing is that it helps us to become free within. And that's where freedom needs to start. And I tell some of the people I take care of, when I talk about Martin Luther King, I'm like, remember he was saying, let freedom ring? So I said, we gotta get free on the inside first before we're free out there. And I think that's one of the big reasons why chiropractic came, is to free us.
Anyone else want to ask Senior Bob One anything? Excellent, Prosper. All right, let's clap for Senior Bob. All right. Well, Fernando will be up later. So we got, well, I already spoke, Bob spoke. Anyone on YouTube? I mean Zoom? Sora or whoever?
Oh, Haig will go.
Senior Haig.
Hey everyone, I haven't been to Self Center in a while, and I'm really happy to be here and see everybody's face. And you know, I came across a video of the Squallies myself, and I haven't sent it to Brian yet, from 2003, and it was at DE, and he was speaking. And I thought about, you know, what it is, you know, how he's touched so many people, you know, giving over 1,500,000 adjustments. And I did my numbers, really, how much have I adjusted? And how many people have I touched? And, you know, my numbers were less than half of that, but they were still pretty good. But still, you know, how much can I help? And really, what can we do? I think of me, you know, how can I can't tell someone else to help another person or do anything. It really falls into my shoulders, what I say. So I'm continually thinking, how can I help people better? And as I'm digging into, and my podcast is a chiropractic philosophy for everyone. And we're breaking down the philosophy from D.D. Palmer mostly. And reading D.D. Palmer's book from 1914, and I gave a copy of that to Pasquale, I realized that book was a understanding from a chiropractor, one of the most learned men of the time, really. D.D. Palmer did more research on neuroanatomy and you know, the neural system than anyone in the world at that point. But what it was is a call to action of really get out and serve the people. You are serving them in a far greater way than we realize, because the spirit needs the material, and the material needs the spirit to animate it. And Pasquale said that to us quite often. And you know, we were talking about how the spiritual friends need us as much as we need them. And I've gotten to that, you know, a little bit closer to a clear concept of what Pasquale was talking about. And you know, when we're looking at just the animation of life, spirit needs this material just to animate itself, to communicate in this plane of consciousness. And you know, the material itself would just be molecules that are, you know, unclaimed if it wasn't for spirit bringing them in together and making us who we are. So that's one of the things that I've been thinking of, that Pasquale has given us through the years, that I'm still working on answers to the questions themselves.
All right, Senior Haig. Anyone want to ask Senior Haig anything? Bob Watton.
Hey, what word do you get when you say the first 4 letters of the word numbers?
Numb?
Word.
Numb?
Well,
No.
He answered it.
That's it. That was it.
Anyone else want to ask Haig, Senior Haig anything, as they call him in Florida? Anyone? Anyone on Zoom world? Anyone? One more time. All right, thank you, Haig. Excellent. The floor, all right, we have some more people on Zoom if they want it. Sora's busy with Jack. So, anyone else from Zoom want to speak? Or Sora?
I think Nancy's.
Nancy Brown, thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm not sure, my internet has been freezing, so,
We can hear you fine and see you fine.
hi, okay. Hi to everybody, greetings from Florida. Just really nice to be with you all and to connect, and just it's like a homecoming. What was interesting, the computer froze and shut down when Pasquale was speaking. And I was reminded about the frequency and the high frequency that he brings in, and that it even supersedes the electronics of the computer. So that was quite wonderful for me. I want to share that once again I've been exposed to the failures of the medical profession, and once again I've been reminded of the importance of chiropractic and the fact that we don't have enough chiropractors serving in areas where people can't afford care. And also in Florida, I'm sure those of you who practice or know anything about Florida, there's a lot of issues with Medicare and what Medicare pays, and it's just ridiculous. And so I'm really feeling that there needs to be somehow an elevation of the quality of education of chiropractors, for one, and also there need to be more scholarships for chiropractors for people who want to be chiropractors, who can't afford to go to school, who are juggling a lot of family obligations, and would make excellent chiropractors. And I'm kind of struggling in myself to figure out how do we get the money to help chiropractors get their education, get out there, be supported. It just seems to me that there needs to be recruitment of people living in low-income areas, so low-income people, to allow them the opportunity to study and to become chiropractors and to be mentored through the process. So I'm kind of looking at that scenario and just wondering. Hi, Jackie.
He's sitting down for you, Nancy.
I see him.
Anything else, Nancy?
No, that's it.
Okay, would anyone like to ask Nancy Brown anything? Anyone? Does anyone know where Nancy Brown grew up? Anyone besides me? Hey, you know?
New York?
Flushing, Queens, right, Nancy? Yes, it's the right answer, I know.
Did she freeze?
She froze. Well, until she unfreezes, anyone else want to ask her anything? Then we'll see if it's... All right, anyone like to ask Nancy anything? Bob?
Are you aware of, mortgages, student loans, all kinds of things can be discharged?
Can be what?
Can be discharged, the debt.
I don't quite know what that means.
Are you aware when the student goes to chiropractic school, when they're signing the promissory note, that they're creating the money? The student's creating the money. And are you aware?
My understanding is that it costs about $250,000 to become a chiropractor now.
Well, I'm talking,
I don't think she...
you can hear me?
Yeah.
No, I'm saying when the student is signing off on the student loans to pay for school, when they sign a promissory note, they are the ones creating the money. The student, not the school, not the company. somebody has to sign that paper to create value and to bring that into existence.
All right, Bob, well, do you know Nancy? You don't? That's all right.
But that opens a whole can of worms,
I
what's
don't
going on.
understand that. I don't know what the promissory note is or what that means, so I'll have to look into that.
Anyone else want to ask Nancy anything? All right, everyone. Jackie is fired up, folks. All right, guys, thank you.
That was
For
it.
Nancy. All right, Sora's gonna speak.
Hi, I'm Sarah, Jersey City. I wasn't going to share this, but Nancy kind of, the topic spurted in me. I was at a seminar last weekend, and I haven't been around a lot of chiropractors outside of Self-Center in a while, and I was just like, oh wow, this is what it feels like to be in the profession. And so there's a lot of things that are really cool and a lot of things that rub me the wrong way. So at the very end of the seminar, the teacher, she did a great job, but she says, just do me a favor, don't be the chiropractor that has the lowest fee in your town. Value yourself and value chiropractic. So I was just, so it rubbed me the wrong way for a few reasons. One, I was wondering, how come no one in chiropractic ever says, don't be the highest salary, don't have the highest fee in your neighborhood? They always say, why don't have the lowest fees? Well, I know from being with Brian, and he charges a low fee, and I didn't understand it when I first met him because I had been fed that too from the profession. Value yourself, value chiropractic by the fee you charge. But when I met Brian, he explained to me there's a lot of people that can't afford, that don't even make $15 an hour, and I want to be there for them. And there's people that don't have health insurance, that don't, and they need to come a few times a week, and I want to make sure that they can get chiropractic. Now, being with Brian, I really respect that. And I don't expect that from everyone. That's his thing. It's not my thing, it's his thing. But it's beautiful to be there for all people of all types of socioeconomic backgrounds need chiropractic. So I know a chiropractic that charges $2,500 an adjustment, and that's fine. That's who he wants to serve. But it doesn't mean he values himself more or he values chiropractic more. It means he wants to work with celebrities and really wealthy people. I was buying Jack t-shirts, and I don't know if you know the company, Old Navy, Gap, and Banana Republic. They're really one company. But Old Navy is like the cheaper version. Gap is like middle of the line, and Banana Republic's a little more expensive. So I was thinking, just because I know how busy Brian is, and I'm like, I wonder if, who makes more money, the cheaper clothing line out of this company or the more high end? And actually, Old Navy blows the other two out of the water. And as far as, so it's just interesting. I don't think it's a good message to the profession to tell people to determine your value on the fee you cost. Value comes between you and God, and having God with you. So that's it.
Anyone want to ask Sora anything? Anyone? Bob Watson.
Did you ask the person who said that, what would you say is a low fee? Or, do you have a number of what that is? And did you ask her what is acceptable in your eyes?
No, I didn't ask her, but I wanted to write her a letter and really go off on her, but something told me not to, because it's exactly. She's just said, don't be the person in town with the lowest rate. But I want to know, why do people say that? Why do people say that? Is it greed? Is it because they want to charge more and they don't want to look expensive? Like, why do they really, what's the thinking behind it? That's what I don't know. I'm curious about it.
Anyone else want to ask her anything? Anyone else?
Uh,
Go ahead, Bob.
yeah, it's almost, like, I can't really ask it.
All right, anyone else want to ask her anything? All right, we'll clap for Sarah. Jack's fired up. He ate a bunch of watermelon before the meeting. I think he ate all of it that Fernando brought. All right, would anyone else here like to speak? We either have Miss Tori or either one of you two. The rest of us have spoken. You don't have to, by the way. Senior Haig.
I just wanted to say something and following along with what Nancy said. It's not a question, but really is a statement. And May 18th, we have a philosophy night at my office for the students at Palmer. And, getting connected with our communities in chiropractic, it takes the chiropractors to go out and do it. And, the ones that are in charge, this is not bad-mouthing anyone, but, it's the Keystone Cops. So there's no one in charge of this playpen we call chiropractic or chiropractic education. So it really takes us to go do it. And, it's a very big responsibility to pass on what we've learned from the others that came before us. And, just like you having self-center and progressing what Pasquale said, keeping that, powerful message going, is paramount to the future of chiropractic. But the people that are students now, it's not a common thing to go look for old tapes of, talks from the past like I did. I listen to everybody. I mean, dead or alive, and mostly the dead, and listen to their message. And it's just not a common thing anymore. So we're trying to digitize it, put it up there, and find this new one in Pasquale. I can't wait to send it to you, Brian, and everybody else. But it just takes doing it one at a time. And like Nancy said, we got to have something set up. But we could create a whole new system. It takes starting the system to do it, and which I feel like I've kind of been trying to do that a number of years, and where now it's really coming into fruition around the world. But it's a big responsibility for all of us, for the fledgling chiropractors and the ones that have been practicing maybe decades as well. But it's the spirit that needs us serving chiropractic, and it's the denizens of the earth that deserve it. That's what D.D. Palmer said. So, how do we build mission in other people? That's a very difficult thing. And D.D. Palmer's first chapter of the 1914 book is called the moral and religious duty of the chiropractor. And that's where I teach my seminars from, is that book. And nerve tracing and that first chapter are the most important for the anchor release that we're teaching now. And you can feel the passion in D.D. Palmer. When you're reading it, you can almost feel him, pumping his fist. Take care of the people. They need you. And if it's not your religious duty, if you don't believe in God or whatever you call it for yourself, make it your moral duty to go out and do this for the people. And, and I got that through Pasquale. Pasquale brought that through from D.D. Palmer. I feel, I can only talk about myself. I feel like I got it, and I'm sure there were many other people as well. So, I just feel blessed, and thanks you for mentioning that, Nancy.
Would anyone else like to speak? Not a shed. I'm gonna sit back here.
Is this good? Where's the camera?
Are you good?
Okay. Good evening. My name is Marisha Morales. I know Brian for about 7 years. At the time that I've been living here in Jersey City, because I got married to my husband James right here. Some of you know I opened a practice like 3 months ago. I was working as an associate in Newark, and before that I was practicing in Costa Rica. So this last few weeks have been very interesting. I've had a lot of challenges And in line of what the doctor was saying here, actually I think most of my patients, which are very few still, have never had chiropractic care. And I'm kind of amazed at the same time because of course chiropractic is very known here in the US as compared to Central America where everybody doesn't even know what the word means or how to pronounce it. So I'm still amazed because most people are like, no, I've never been to a chiropractor, and it's almost like we have a divine appointment. Like I'm meant to be here after being a chiropractor for almost 27 years or so, and moving here to Jersey City and then getting to know people that of course are in pain. They don't have optimal health, and here I am, and maybe something they of course liked about me, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna come and see you. So it's just refreshing, and it definitely puts me on a mission that I have learned to take even before, like sometimes my own personal needs. Like sometimes I may not be up to par, for many reasons. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go and adjust. Even when I was working in Newark, sometimes I didn't want to adjust people, for, just personal or labor reasons. And I'm like, but once I'm in a room with someone touching their spines, everything disappears. And it's just like one-on-one, with that deep connection. And afterwards, of course, the person gets up and I'm like, wow, I did my mission. So it's still there, and I'm just, delighted to find these people that maybe they were just waiting for someone like me to come along and invite them over and, get a miracle of chiropractic. That's it.
Anyone like to ask Marichelle anything? Anyone? You stand over here. Bob.
How did you like living in Costa Rica?
I loved it. I mean, my background is from Colombia, so I did have a reference. But Costa Rica is very easygoing. It's definitely one of the safest countries in all of Latin America. They don't have an army. The police is almost kind of laid back. The people, and there's actually a lot of North American chiropractors that do go to Costa Rica. Actually, all the chiropractors that are there are foreign born because there's no university there. A lot of them, most of them are from the US. Some from England, basically, but it's a nice country. But it's good if you know what you want to do there, because of course the economy, is not the best. But if you do know, then it's sweet. And most people do like to live along the Pacific, which are the best countries. It was great.
Anyone else like to ask Marichelle anything? Anyone? Anyone? All right, man. What's it got? Excelente, Marichelle. All right. See, you want to say anything, James? You don't have to.
No.
Okay. Victoria, you gonna say anything? No? All right then, bring up the featured speaker, Senor Fernando Mendez. Excelente.
Clap for me. So, good to be here, guys. Everybody's touched on a little bit of what I'm going to talk about. So, chiropractic, we have the D.D. Palmer saying that chiropractic came here to connect the spiritual with the physical. And last time I talked about what I learned from Pasquale, and I looked back at that video and I saw, I put so much into it, but I was going, man, why did I go so wild thinking about all these things? And I realized, oh, that was going to be the last time down in Brooklyn, And I kind of went through all his ideas, but it was kind of an explanation. And what I've more recently come is I've kind of gotten more in depth into this stuff, getting more of a feeling of it, getting maybe more of an experience than just like looking at it from afar. Kind of that spiritual, the connection between the physical and spiritual became more real to me. It's really affected how I see kind of the world. Like once you see these things, you can't like unsee them, and it gives you a more holistic picture of what's going on. And it is interesting to see what your reality is. Some people, I mean, my mom just watched TV. I mean, she had life experiences, she knew some stuff, but she watched a lot of TV and definitely influenced her. If you're just sitting there hour after hour, and you start thinking those things are real, and obviously you can be misled. So, it's good to question where you're getting your ideas from, what's painting your reality. And so recently, I think I've talked about it before I started reading the Bible, and that's really given me a whole different idea of what's really going on. I'll start with the stories of Jesus. I think I've talked about it. I went to Catholic school. I grew up in that tradition, but I never read it all through so thoroughly and seeing how it really is just a story of this guy going around healing people. And we can go on and on about this stuff, but the things I really want to note was when he was in Nazareth, his hometown, he had trouble taking care of these people. And this guy, the story is about the living God. He should be all powerful, but in his town, he really didn't have any power over these people because they saw him as the carpenter's son or as, Jimmy's older brother. So there was something in those people that prevented them from connecting with him. And then when he would heal a person, he says, your faith has healed you. So those people had something in them that allowed them to heal. And I think that, I look at that when people come into me, we are in the world of chiropractic. Sometimes the first time the person comes in, what's their reality of chiropractic? They're not sometimes they have no idea. I swear to God, every day I see people have no idea what I'm going to do with them. A lot of times they do get better regardless of what they're thinking. But sometimes they do have a mental block. And yes, we serve and take care of these people. Fundamentally, that's our basic thing. But then also, how do we get people coming, how do we educate them, or how do we get them to tune into what we're doing? And we're obviously we're all trying to figure that one out. Let me see where I'm at here. So going back to that bit about reality, I was as much as a materialist as anybody else. I want to see results. But every time you try to pin something down, even just how do you make good food, or what chiropractic about, you end up moving away from it and getting into more of the idea world or the non-physical. And again, seeing that connection, you see how they both influence each other. For example, we're talking about having freedom, so we all personally want to be doing, be free, do what we want to do. But the idea of freedom, we can trace back into all these debates that have gone on forever, and we trace it back into these cultures, these things that really we can't grab a hold of. They seem unreal, but they're affecting us every single day. So the ideas of Jesus and healing, those obviously affects me every day when I see my people, kind of just putting me in the idea of, okay, I don't have to be all things to all people, only certain people are going to vibrate with me. And you have to feel it. Sometimes I feel this person's going to be too tough. I have to keep changing my opinion and being open to it, but at the same time being open to maybe it's not going to happen between me and this person. We're not going to make that connection. Another thing I got from the story of the Bible is I've gotten through the first 5 books. Well, I've gotten through a lot of it, but now I did finish the first 5 books. That's the Torah, and they talk a lot about God as the Father. And we had a speaker last time talking about God and why would He do these things. And if you put it through this prism of Him as the Father, you see we're supposed to just obey. We're supposed to obey these commandments He's laid forth in front of us. And it's pretty clear. If you don't do X, Y, and Z in those first 5 books, you're going to die, you're going to have disease. So do what I say, okay? I'm the daddy, I'm in charge. And I got this idea from somebody who was saying, yeah, you have to be a slave to God. And I was like, that's some heavy stuff, okay? That's a lot to commit to. And I presented it to somebody who's in this audience. I told that to Bob. Bob was going to have none of it. He instantly texted me back. He said, just align your will with the will of God. I was like, oh man, that feels a lot easier. That's more appetizing to me. And I saw this idea of His will. I aligned it with the idea of we each have a script inside of us, if you want to call that your genes, and you kind of play the cards you have, and you play them as best as you can for the best outcomes. And again, you get these ideas from far off places, but you bring them down to the nitty-gritty of the daily life. Again, when you align your will, you still have the freedom, I guess, to go off course and to just reject all of it. You can say and do whatever you feel like, but you're gonna have to pay the consequences. One of the other things is having to change the idea of obeying and being a slave. We said, we use the word serving people. About 2 meetings ago in March, Brian brought the word observe. It was something I had been looking at, the word observe. And Brian told us it's to keep watch of your patients and of yourself. Obviously, when the people come in, we have a certain focus already. You you come into my office, I don't have an X-ray machine or MRI machine, but what the people are getting, you know, they don't even know. You know, I'm looking at that person kind of, you know, I think most chiropractors, you can kind of turn it on and start breaking down. It's kind of rude to do to somebody who hasn't given you permission, but you can start looking at this person, you put that focus in, just looking at their posture, how they're moving, you start analyzing their face. I had a guy come in a couple of days ago, he just walked in, we were by ourselves, I was going, how's it going? He just kept going like this, touching his eye. I said, what's wrong with this guy's eye? But he kept doing it, I go, oh, he's nervous. So I'm watching him, but then I'm also realizing, you know, he's nervous around me. He's trying to, I don't know, he's coming in, he doesn't know what I do. He can tell I'm an authority figure, I'm comfortable in my own place, so I also have to know, okay, just put the brakes back. This kid's nervous. I didn't ask him too many questions. I took care of him. He left. He was like, he still left going, he said, I'm not sure of anything that just happened, but I do feel better. Should I come back? I said, come back here in my hours. They said, you're in pretty rough shape. Come back next week. So I kept an eye on myself. I kept an eye on him. But when you're looking at these people, you're also taking on the role, like I said, that role they talk about in the Bible, of fatherly. You're making judgment calls on these people. Obviously, you're trying to help them along. You're trying to bring them into symmetry or balance. But you are judging. Going back to the word observe, you can also have, like, we observe a moment of silence. And Pasquale would always be like, just keep your mouth quiet. Don't talk so much. I think we all know the value of that, just like putting that focus in. There's a time and place to talk. Like sometimes people won't relax on tables, so you make a joke or something like that. So it's not an absolute rule. But when I look at that silence, sometimes I've equated chiropractic, taking care of people, the adjustment to like hitting a fastball. You know the guys who go up there to hit that ball, they're not thinking about they can't be thinking. They're just up there, and the Yankees got this new guy. Actually, I haven't watched him play with the Yankees, but I've seen him in the past. This guy Juan Soto, and I haven't watched him in years, but I just know how he stands there, and he's so relaxed. And he has this ritual, you know, he touches here, he touches there, and he's sitting there. You can see he transmits that relaxation across the TV to you, and he's ready to pounce on that ball. You know, he's not thinking about anything. He's in the zone. So when you're observant, it's also like a religious right? And I think Haig or somebody was saying that, or we have a moral obligation. So I think as chiropractors, we observe to chiropractic. We all have different techniques, but we all have a basic idea of the philosophy of the body will come back into alignment, and we're giving it a hand. And how it comes through each one of us is going to be different, right? We've heard the stories of like, okay, this technique, but that guy had crooked fingers, or the other guy, he couldn't do side posture. So you adapt to whatever you can do. And Brian was talking about the true north, and we have heard so much about the true north here, but it made me think again about this father image, of aligning yourself with this father. A big story they tell you in the Bible, from what I've gathered, I'm still not a Bible scholar, is that we're made in the image of God, so our responsibility is also to be imagers to other people. So that's why we take on responsibility, such as being a chiropractor. It's like a responsibility. We judge, we have to be professional about it. That's kind of what was I getting from the Bible. Then I also came across, in my little Bible studies, this biblical scholar called Dr. Michael Heiser. I think Marichelle knows about him. She talked about him whenever she was last here or a few months ago, and it was at the same time I was just discovering him, so I guess he was supposed to come into our world. And he really brought to life that spiritual world for me. He's a biblical scholar, he looks at all the language, and you gotta understand what the people who wrote this, they had a certain audience, and those people in that audience were just immersed in the spiritual world. Little things in that book that we don't understand, they had clear on. And I guess one of the things they had clear on was like, this whole spiritual world exists, we're interacting with it all the time. So he goes through that, and he explains how that kind of system works, and it just made a great impression on me. I had looked at other people who had studied that side of the world, and I don't know why, but he really drove it home for me. And ultimately, he says, there is a good and evil going on, and that really has made an impression on me because and COVID was the first time I've talked about it. I was like, man, there's really some evil going on here. This is not just like folly. This is like intent. And these are things he talks about, and we've talked about that stuff a lot today up here. We've mentioned how there's forces out there who are trying to keep you disconnected, so you don't see how the physical is connected to the spiritual. They're trying to turn you away from God. That's something somebody said up here. So one of those things Bob was talking about, the contracts and looking into these things and the paperwork. This is the second time I brought up Bob, I guess. And I had an issue. I didn't mean to talk about this today, so I would probably talk about this more than anything. But I had an issue at my place where they wanted to put these smart meters in my house. And some people say they're not the best. And I said, well, I have a good system. It's not broken. You guys are obviously billing me. Let's just keep it going this way. I don't want the smart meter in here. I was doing it for health reasons. But they insisted people would come by all the time. I would get calls. So I followed something from the internet. I sent some letter to the head of Con Edison. I don't even know what I was sending. But then my bill went crazy. Like I was just getting $3,000 bills. Whoa. People would come and look at my meter and then they would never report it. It happened like 5 times. And then I was like, I just can't deal with it. I have tenants, their bills are getting out of whack. So I said, go put in the smart meter. I put like a shield around it. But all these things of like, how do you get out of this? Do it this way. Sometimes I feel like it's part of the whole racket of just wasting your time on all these craziness, right? When you could be concentrating on different things. So it's hard to pick and choose like am I gonna fight? Like I had to just give up on the smart meter, even if there was health consequences. I tried to I was like, I gotta put the smart meter in, but I did shield it, so I found a way around it. And I felt, okay, I'm satisfied. Maybe it's not perfect, but at least I got around it. So looking at what this guy Heiser was saying about the story about good and evil, bringing it down to the material for me, how do I apply this? It really was for me kind of a reaffirmation of why I have my practice, where I have it. They talk about the transgressions, like why are we in this big mess? And he talks about we fell, we had the incident in the garden where we ate the apple. But then the next one he talks about is that we had this Tower of Babel incident where we tried to build a minaret up to the sky. God was like, no, I didn't tell you guys to do that, don't be doing that. I'm going to scatter you guys, mess up all your languages, and this is why we have this whole mess we're in now. This is the story from the Bible. And being in Brooklyn, I got everybody there, right? We got all the cultures there. And I know growing up there, you kind of get sick of people. If you talk to a Brooklyner, if you ever watch the Spike Lee movie, Do the Right Thing, they have a scene where they go from like nationality to nationality, and like the Korean guy's making fun of the black guy's making fun of the Jewish person. Because everybody's on top of each other, everybody's stepping on everybody's toes. And you could think, oh, these people, goodness, I think very low esteem of each other, but it's almost like it's comical, right? You noticing these distinctions of everybody, even though they do it rough, there's a softness to it because there is a humor in it. It's like you got to recognize, some people are made in certain ways and it's kind of funny to other people. That's fine, right? But for me, there's so much involved in having that office there, and a lot of it got brought up today. For example, I do feel like somebody said the word divine appointment. I feel like I have a divine appointment there. I'm supposed to be there. I have a low fee, and some days I go, it's not low enough. Some days I'm like, it's just right. Maybe I should raise it. Who knows? But I do feel like, it is a privilege to be a chiropractor. Sometimes, it's work, but it's a privilege. It's pretty cool. Like just the value of the work itself. It is massively interesting. You get to help people. You get to make money. It's like, the world's not perfect, but you got a pretty good deal, Like one chiropractor says, look, at least you're not there digging ditches, Like you can be really killing yourself, really hard work. So it's all relative and it's a pretty good deal. it's also, you know, the low fees that people can afford so they come in. I mean, I know how often I get adjusted, so I want to make that accessible to people. And just equating everything of value with the money is, you know, especially when you start looking at this broad picture of what reality is, you're stuck on the physical. It gives you a very bleak existence. Like, you're not going to have much going on there for yourself. When you look at the bigger picture, I just know, like, I talked about following that script. Like, I was like, things were put in front of me. I could have accepted them or been like, oh, this is not good enough for me. I want to do it this way. But I like took it. Okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to practice here. People know my past. You know, Pasquale. You know, my parents were in Brooklyn. Pasquale was there. It just all kind of opened. The doors just kept opening up. And if I had just been following the money, these doors wouldn't open up. And I've been rewarded richly, you know, for following that path. So the last thing I was going to talk about was the last person I came across was this guy C.S. Lewis. I don't know that much about him. I came across him in a book that was comparing him to Joseph Campbell, and I'm a big Joseph Campbell. I've read a lot of his stuff, but kind of like what I was talking about in my last talk at Pasquale's. Like, I was just looking at this stuff, and he never really invigorated anything because I was looking at all these stories, and even Campbell would recognize. It's one thing to know all these different stories and how they're universally applicable, but it's another thing to be actually in a tradition and go through it. It's kind of like knowing a lot about chiropractic but not getting adjusted, let's say. So, and then I was listening to some of his stuff and it said, oh, brought to you by like the Rockefeller Foundation. I was like, well, that's weird. That's not a good connection. You know, they brought that piece of reality, and I was like, wait a second. So he saw the universality of myth in all these cultures, and then you have this guy C.S. Lewis. He's looking at it. He's telling you, myth is the language of the imagination. This is how we can understand this non-physical world that we can't see with our senses. And he says all these myths, they all have a universality. He's coming at it from a Christian viewpoint. He says Jesus, the Christ, is the culmination of all these myths made real. He became incarnate. This is the story of Christianity. God came to life. He came as a physical person. And again, he's saying that all the myths point to this man. He's a culmination. And when I look at it, you wonder how Christianity spread. I don't know that much about it, but you go, even the Gentiles were just like, oh, they picked up on it, let's say, because this stuff was in the air already. The spiritual knowledge was there. They were immersed in it, and when they saw this come along, they kind of just jumped on board. And I think a lot what I'm talking about with this connection between the physical and the spiritual is also when you talk about faith. And there's a faith from Hebrews 11, 1 through 2. It says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So, as C.S. Lewis was saying about these myths being part of the world of imagination, the faith is also you have to have some kind of imagination beyond the physical, something that's inspiring you. And ultimately, again, all these heady ideas or these beliefs, how do we as chiropractors apply it? Obviously, when our patients come in, and what do we see? Do we see just like a crooked spine that we're going to knock into place, you know? Even at its most rudimentary level, chiropractic works. But then when you're really trying to gain more, just become better at it, when you start making that connection with the spiritual world, you start looking at it as a tree of life or as a bridge between the physical and the spiritual, it brings more refinement to the art of chiropractic. And I think Brian might talk about it in the future, but I know it's mentioned here, and I don't want to step on his toes, or really it's not my place to go into it right now, but Brian's mentioned about the Ark of the Covenant. So that's another idea of the Tree of Life or the Ark of the Covenant. I look forward to hearing more about that. But kind of wrapping up the whole thing, is, again, the observing the people, what I pulled out from the Bible stories, the fitting the story into the story, this mass story, like this reality, where do you fit into it? And when you expand it to include the spiritual world, it energizes people. I think like the Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff like that. I think that's part of the step of getting off the alcohol is you have to connect with the spiritual somehow to kind of put your focus there instead of maybe the booze. I'm not too sure about that. But it definitely gives people purpose. It's giving me more purpose in my practice. The recognizing of the language of these myths, but also not just recognizing it, but using your own imagination. Every person has to kind of get involved with it. You gotta become part of the story. It's gonna take your imagination to get involved. And it is a whole different language, and I've been around it, but sometimes you do feel like you do need to connect it back to something physical, because it's just like this thought world. And there are a lot of forces out there trying to divert you in so many loony things to get you distracted. But what we're seeing here is the Squally story is coming more and more alive. And the key is, like, again, bringing it down to the material. We see like the good that's come out of it. Like we see that it's promoting life, it's promoting growth, versus the other system we see, which is promoting disease and death. And I just had here from somebody talking about the clock and the alignment. And you can just, I had this artist draw a picture of the chiropractic clock. I just wrote the word chiropractic with the tick. Chiropractic's 12 letters. I had the hands on the clock and picture of the seasons. And it's just nice to look at it and leave it at that. And sometimes when you try to really overthink these things, you kind of lose the imagination or the power of it. You're trying to synthesize it all into material. Sometimes you just have to kind of let it float out there and not make it too concrete. And that is all I'm going to say today.
Anyone like to ask Fernando anything? Anyone? Senor Bob?
After Con Ed installed the smart meter, did your bills go back to normal?
Oh yeah. I mean, you can't get $3,000. It was horrifying. And they're saying, it was a lot of drama, it was a lot of stress, but I think we're working it out.
Anyone else want to ask Fernando anything? I do. What is imagination? You use that word a lot. What is it?
Imagination. It's like part hope, right? It was in that definition of faith. Aspirations, or just whatever you're connected to in that spiritual world that feeds you, I guess.
Anyone else like to ask Fernando anything? Anyone? Nancy Brown.
Yeah, hi. Wonderful to hear this talk. Congratulations. And I'm glad to hear that you're in the struggle of trying to understand this, which we all are. I think Pasquale said, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, that he studied the Bible for 39 years?
Correct.
Or 37 years? Yeah, before he even started to understand it. So that gave me a lot of comfort, because I'm always dealing with it on a lot of levels. So where do you see yourself on that continuum? Are you going to continue with it and keep studying it?
Yeah, definitely. And just what you're saying, obviously there's so much to learn, but like I was just finishing saying, it could be so, it is almost literally exhaustive. Like Pasquale had to give up his practice to get into the spiritual world. And I know, like, getting to talk together, it's good that we rotate, we all come up here because we are all still in practice. So they have an expression, I guess, in the whole biblical of already but not yet, right? So recognizing we've already arrived, we know this stuff. You're not going to have perfect knowledge, and you're going to have to go forth. So, I could be guilty of forcing the issue and trying to go too fast. where I just have to take it piecemeal, go nicely, kind of enjoy it, and already just acknowledge where we're at, and use what we have.
Anyone else want to ask Fernando anything? Anyone? Fernando, I know your mom was from Puerto Rico, and one of her sayings was, I think, you weren't feeling well, she'd give you something, she'd say, say, cure or te mata, what was that? It's gonna cure you or kill you?
Oh, o te cura o te mata. I don't know what that has to do. I don't know what. Her healing system was not a thing I would write a book about. I mean, I don't think she's alone. You know, it's like I'm pretty sure somebody's done that comedy skit where your mom would just go in and grab whatever, the penicillin from 3 years ago, the Pepto-Bismol, and just, you know, make her own little brew. And it would either kill you or cure you, right? But sometimes I've said that to people, but I've stopped saying that a long time ago. But many things come out, because I'm dealing with a Spanish audience. So my whole background in Spanish is really with my parents and with my mother, and sometimes this crazy old Puerto Rican lady comes out in the things I say, because it's what I know in Spanish. And then people, I just like, too bad with these people, they have to deal with this rough Puerto Rican attitude. I guess they need it.
No more.
Anyone else like to ask Fernando anything? Anyone? All right, Fernando, gracias. Thanks for that. All right, everyone, thank you. Let me check this now. So.